So now we're going to talk about negative externalities. To better understand the case, we choose a real-world example of plastic waste recycling industry in a documentary called Plastic China. Before we get started, let's watch a small clip. So, what kind of externalities are generated in the industry? We divided them into 5 aspects: environmental, health, social, educational, international, and racial. So the first one, environmental, the negative externalities are water pollution from untreated water, air pollution from burning plastics, soil contamination, long-term ecological damage, and reduction in local biodiversity. The next one is health. The negative externalities are respiratory disease from toxic fumes, skin and eye irritation, cancer risks, exposure to microplastics and chemicals. Okay, the third one is social and educational. So we know in the documentary the children, they don't have opportunity to get education, and because their family are low income households, so they stuck in a poverty cycle which have a negative impact on social mobility. And the fourth one is international externalities. So the rich countries will export their waste to developing countries, and the poor country will import to increase their country's income. And that leads to global inequality to pollution distribution. The final one is racial externalities. We know the people in the factory, they are often 彝族, which are poorer than Han-人, since Han-人don't even want to have that kind of job to recycle plastic. Okay, so next you might ask, who are the producers and victims in these externalities? We also separate them into several aspects: global, individual, and industry. So for the first one, who are the producers in the global aspect? There are rich countries that export plastic waste to developing countries, and the victims are developing countries that import plastic waste to increase their country income. The second one is individual aspect. The producers in this aspect are consumers from rich countries who overuse plastics and don't do the proper recycle, and the victims, they are workers and residents from the factory or live nearby the factory. The final one is industry level, and the producers in the industry level are plastic manufacturer and packaging companies use single-use plastics or package excessively, like coupon. And the victims, they are still workers and residents live or nearby the factory. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the second part, graphical analysis. This is the company's private supply curve, and we know that there is an external cost between the social cost and private cost. So we add this up and we'll get the social supply curve. And here's our demand curve. So we can find the equilibrium of both of them. First, let's look at the private one. The equilibrium quantity is QS and the equilibrium price is PS. Next, let's look at the social one. The equilibrium quantity is QS prime and the equilibrium price is PS prime. So through this graph, we can see that there's a difference between QS and QS prime. Why market produces too much pollution without government's intervention? Let us use the graph to explain why. So as you can see, the original supply curve, which is the company's private supply curve, doesn't need to bear the responsibility of external cost. So they produce things as the supply curve I make a check on, thus causing the QS is bigger than the QS prime in the picture. Okay, next we're going to identify the deadweight loss area. So here the yellow area shows a private total supplies at the private equilibrium. But because the private supply doesn't include the external cost, which is the purple parallelogram, as we know from the previous information, the difference between QS and QS prime represents the amount of overproduction, and the welfare loss from this overproduction is the deadweight loss, which is the purple triangle here. And under these circumstances, we can say that both producers and consumers gain in the presence of negative externalities, since producers produce more and earn more profit, and the consumers get a lower price and can buy more, but the society as a whole losses. So how does the deadweight loss represent the inefficiency? To put this simply, we can say that is because it measures the extra production that harms society more than it helps. Those trades shouldn't happen, and the triangle shows how big the loss is. After we're talking about the externalities, let's talk about how to correct the market failure. There are several ways like quantity regulation, price regulation, tradable permits, and information disclosure. First one, the quantity regulation. The pros of it is the emission amount is fixed, and the cons are it is not that flexible. Firms stop innovations when they get to the limit. And the most important one is that it is hard to evaluate. The second one is the price regulation. The pros of firms have continuous incentives to innovate, and the government can earn tax revenue. For the cons, it's like the quantity regulation. The rate is hard to set, and it also sometimes can be politically sensitive. So we talk about the tax in the price regulation. The tax is called Pigouvian tax. Pigouvian taxes can let the firms to take account of the social costs arise from the negative externality. Thus, their own incentives will guide them to produce a socially efficient amount. The tax will be set to equals to the external cost. Based on the previous information, the tax is set to be equals to the external cost. Thus, the supply curve will shift to the social cost 1, and the equilibrium quantity is QS prime. The equilibrium price is PS prime. So it shows how the tax shifts the marginal private cost to reach the socially optimum equilibrium. The third one is tradable permits. The pros are it is efficient, and like the quantity regulation, the pollution amount is fixed. For the cons, the price of permits can sometimes fluctuate, and it requires a well-designed monitored market. The last one is the information disclosure. The pros are its cost is low and easy to implement. The consumers can make better choice, and the firms care about because of the reputation. For the cons, our information disclosure needs consumers care about the issues, and it doesn't mean the guarantee. So, for example, it's like the other countries asking TSMCs to do for the environmental issue right now. There are several solutions the government can provide, such as charging taxes, imposing quota, or implementing tradable permits. In our case, plastic China, the China government intervenes in this situation by enacting a law to ban the import of plastic waste in 2017. Was it effective? And what are the challenges? I would say it was effective, though the information from China wasn't that transparent. But so far we know was that the village in the documentary had all quit the job of recycling the waste plastics. And for the challenges, there are challenges from global aspect, the livelihood of those workers, and the black market. So the first one, global aspect, the challenges are where should the plastics go? And for the second, livelihood of the workers, how should they find the next job? And the final one, black market, is there might be some illegal trades of recycling. The international externalities happens when the actions of one country cause pollution or damage that another country has to suffer. And the other one is that pollution may be authored in the places that are not categorized into which country's territory, like Pacific Ocean. I would say that international cooperation can serve as a Pigouvian mechanism, since we know that there are some discussion in COP30 to talk about the polluter pays system, which is similar to the Pigouvian taxes ideas.